live. Hey, welcome everyone to the Cube Skills community, coming at you live here on YouTube on May 18th. If you're in the chat watching today, give us a little shout out. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Would love to hear from you. Cube Skills is a community for everyone to join and collaborate with others to learn containers and Kubernetes. Today, we're joined by John, Jared, and Fred from KubeFirst. KubeFirst is a team of experienced technologists building open source tools which help teams build cloud native applications easier, better, and faster. Go to KubeFirst.io to check that out. John is quoted on the website as saying, most incredible platform since the dawn of time. I'd like to point that out as a point there to, draw you in. And,
phenomenal testimonial that John Dietz.
Yeah, I mean, insightful words to live by. So KubeFirst.io. And for those of you who haven't heard of KubeFirst, it's a fully automated and auditable GitOps platform, and I have played around with it a little bit, and it's incredibly easy to set up, and it's free and open source, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. But first, want to welcome you guys to the live stream. And right off the bat, I have to compliment you on the name. Wonder where that comes from, the cube, but it's just genius. So welcome, guys. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. We're happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and so Fred, you're the developer advocate over there at KubeFirst. John and Jared, your co-founders. And what we're talking about today is growing an open source. And so you have kind of an interesting story. I would like to call on John first, if you don't mind, and just ask you about was a train ride to Datadog Dash?
Yeah, no, our origin story is a little bit of a fun one. My buddy Jared and I, we were working at this big data company. It was both of our first Kubernetes project ever, and we had been our CTO, this guy Andy Shea, he had a directive to build the entire company on Kubernetes, and this was back in the Kubernetes early days. So it was a little bit of a challenge for us. After 9 months or so, we had built this platform out, and we had all these great open source tools that were worked really well together. We loved it as cloud engineers. Our developers loved the story. The security team liked the story. It was just like very frictionless and easy. Our company at the time, this company Remine, sent us up to Datadog Dash. Jared and I, it was our first conference that we were ever going to attend. And so we're on this MARC train heading up the East Coast, up to New York to Datadog Dash, and it was truly like we were both remote, or I was at least a remote employee at the time. We didn't have that much time to just kind of sit back and kick around ideas. This was kind of a rare opportunity for us to stop working and just kind of talk philosophy and tech and cloud native, and we were reflecting on the platform that we built, and we were like, well, it's such an impactful platform, and everybody loves it. But it took forever to build. And as we started to look around the landscape, that was the story everywhere. Everyone was struggling to adopt Kubernetes. Everybody was finding the CNCF landscape tools to be a little bit challenging from a cognitive load standpoint to tackle all of this new tech and put it all together in the right way, in a way that doesn't take a new startup company 9 months to build their platform. And so that day we bought, at the time it was KubeFirst.com, which we still own. We're KubeFirst.io now. But we bought that domain that day, started working nights and weekends on trying to figure out if we could turn that 9-month story into a single command. And so, we it's a lengthy origin story. I don't know how deep you want to go into it, but at the time we had this idea that we were going to be a closed source project, and that we were going to take this incredible power of being able to build a company from scratch in minutes. And we kind of had to go through an adventure. As a closed source project where we're bootstrapping everything, we're paying our own cloud bills. We're working nights and weekends to try and get the project off the ground. And it was what was eye-opening was once we got the product finished. Once we had the product finished, at least pilot ready, we had a tough call to make about whether or not we were going to keep it closed source and bootstrap, or should we open source and bring the power of the Kubernetes community that we love so much. I mean, all the tools on our platform are so great because of the communities that are around those tools like Argo CD, tools like Terraform, enormous open source providers and communities that provide incredible power and talent, and we frankly want to be a part of that. So even though we had this closed source project, we had this what felt like an open source idea, but it's scary to take a project that you've worked on for years in a closed source capacity and then just suddenly make it available to the world, and whoever's going to take from it whatever they're going to take from it and do whatever they're going to do. Like that's a tough call. It ended up being the right call for us for sure, but
I was going to say like, little did you know that like the fact that you open source your project is part of the reason why I'm here. Because like the last job I was working with closed source technology, and I'm a pragmatic person, but I'm a huge open source fan, and I like when my project or the application I focused on is open. And to be honest, when it comes to developer relation, I feel like it just makes my life easier. And it's just great, being, as you said, being part of that community, having people that can do PR, that can submit issue, having that real human interaction with people. So, I mean, I love the project, and the fact that it was open source was just like, okay, I think I found like my next journey and where it brings me. So maybe it was a good thing or a bad thing, you tell me, but like that's part of the reason I'm here. Like a nice product and the fact that it's open source. So little did you know that you made maybe the right or wrong choice, because now I'm here. So you tell me.
Fred, if we could open source twice to get 2 Freds, we would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit. You said you started as closed source, and then you decided to open it up. What were some of those decision points, and what made you open it up to the public and have people contributing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just the Kubernetes ecosystem that we're building our product to encapsulate. It almost it doesn't seem right necessarily to take all these great open source products and build a product that puts them together in an exceptional way, and then not offer that to the open source community. Like, so that we started the project on open source. Like we were a GitLab shop for years internally. Self-hosted omnibus GitLab runners. Jared and I, as technical founders that are just working nights and weekends, rubbing Kubernickels together to try and keep your costs under control. And when you have products like GitLab that do offer small projects like ours was a free and valuable and powerful platform to run software, to run your shop, was incredibly valuable to us. We wouldn't have been able to build KubeFirst without tools like that are providing that foundation. And we want to be a part of that foundation for folks that are adopting cloud native as well. Like we know firsthand that it's why we built our product, was because of that initial challenge. Like it hit us at our core that like we didn't know Kubernetes. We didn't know all these great cloud native tools yet. Now all of a sudden there's a project, they've got some seed round funding, they're ready to go, and you've got a lot of work to do. And so if we can make that experience of getting into a production ready Kubernetes ecosystem faster, where everything's working, so that you have a operational environment to explore and learn how these tools work, that's a much more effective way to learn how the pieces fit together in a production ready way than just experimenting and reading 1,000 blogs and trying to figure out which ones are lies and which ones aren't. So that was a major catalyst toward open sourcing. Jared, are there any other thoughts that come to mind about like the particular decision point of open sourcing the project?
Yeah, I guess two kind of jump to mind. One's a little bit more true to the open source side, but the other was like money was becoming a problem for us, right? Like, time and as well as money. Our families are looking at us like, you guys work every night, every weekend. It's been years. What are you doing here? You guys can't do this forever unless you're going to get it across that next hurdle to get it to the next stage. So that was one aspect. Transparently, you can only fund something for so long yourself before you figure out if it's that thing you're going to commit to. But one of the things that I think gave us a lot of comfort was the experience that we had when we were building our platform for that 9 months. There's one quick story that I'll just like recap the Cliff Notes. One of our data teams was having a problem leveraging the AWS cloud for secrets management. They were using SSM, but they were doing high volume jobs on large data sets, and they were getting rate limited in the middle of their jobs. So this option came up, and the cloud team, it was me, John, and one more guy who was on our team at the time, and we decided that we were going to implement HashiCorp Vault. This was back in 2017, so Kubernetes was still, bleeding edge. We were using kops. There was really no good managed services yet. And one of the communities that we landed in was the Bonsai Cloud community. And we were trying to understand how to get Vault running in Kubernetes in a way that was going to satisfy our shop's requirements. And there was just these people there that would help us answer questions about all these Kubernetes things that we just didn't have the expertise in and know how to do without their help. So having those extra hand, actually one of the guys' names was Nando. I'll probably remember his tag or his Slack handle forever because of how helpful he was to us. So we ended up implementing their Bank Vaults implementation for HashiCorp Vault. And what's kind of funny about that was it was that time when companies were starting to actually also buy into the cloud native journey and experience. And so we had spent probably 3-4 months building out this new Vault implementation, getting it set up across the entire organization. All the teams had adopted it. And no kidding, 1 week later, HashiCorp released their Helm chart. And it was like, okay, well, we just invested all this time in this third party who had done this ahead of HashiCorp. But they were extremely helpful, and we kept that implementation in place. But it's just kind of a peek at what the landscape looked like at that time. You didn't have all these companies that had already figured out how to deliver Helm charts and their Kubernetes native versions of their software. So I think that was another driving force for me personally, getting that firsthand experience from the open source community and having them help and knowing how nice it was when you didn't know what your next step was.
Yeah, I'm sure looking back on it now, it kind of seems, very fluid and very, very much like you followed step A and then step B and then step C. But I'm sure there were lots of stumbling blocks along the way, right? I think I heard you say, and I linked this article that you did, John, on NewStack. I thought it was really helpful for getting to know not only KubeFirst, but the problems that it's solving. and you talk about how this thing called GitOps came along and totally derailed you, right?
Yeah, that was man, GitOps changed the game and changed our trajectory in a heavy way. We were probably about like, I don't know, a year, maybe even more than a
year and a half, 2 years. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
We were far. We were almost at the. We could probably try and sell this to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. We were close to monetization ish, and then we discovered GitOps, and not just GitOps as a tool for your platform tools, but like that you can integrate GitOps with your application builds and delivery and promotion to a development staging production environment, and that you get this amazing instant improvement in your disaster recovery posture. Like you can, because everything, Kubernetes messed up GitOps. So GitOps is not necessarily new. There are folks that will that'll tell you that, like, you know, GitOps has been around since Chef and since Puppet, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong. But Kubernetes is an incredibly declarative engine. Like the entire system runs on your desired state that you provide to Kubernetes and YAML, and it just relentlessly works to make that desired state your actual state. And if it can't, it'll tell you why. And there's something so elegant about taking the Kubernetes engine that is driven on desired state and taking Git, which is very, very good at taking flat files like YAML and managing changes to them and why changes happened. And there's a workflow that developers are already familiar with. And these are foundational distributed tools that we're all using anyway. If you're a software development shop, you're using Git. And if you've bought into Kubernetes already, you have Git, you have Kubernetes. And if you can marry these two pieces of tech together, it just, especially if you have like a deep understanding of what Kubernetes is doing, it was obvious what GitOps was about to do to the industry. But we didn't build KubeFirst on GitOps initially. So we had a really hard decision to make as to whether or not we were going to re-architect the platform and buy in lock, stock, and barrel to GitOps, or are we going to stay implicit and stay script ops, you know, sort of the way that a lot of the leaders in the space were at the time using. And we bought into GitOps. It was the best move we ever made. Since then, we've become enormous GitOps advocates. We think that it's a great way to run your architecture, but that was a tough call, throwing away all that work that we were doing nights and weekends for all that time and trying to rebuild it up on the GitOps discipline. But what an enormous impact it made for us.
Yeah.
I need to say though that like it took me years to find YAML an elegant solution.
It's an acquired taste. It is. So the first time I ran into Kubernetes, I hated Kubernetes. It sounded like some kind of buzzword technology that was going to be another flash in the pan, and that the words that they were using were all the same words that everyone else was using. And until you actually become a Kubernetes practitioner, it's hard to really grok the power of that desired state engine and the relentless loop that it applies to everything across cloud native architecture, from load balancing to DNS internally, to your deployments, to your scale, to your service accounts, to whatever it might be. You hear a lot of folks saying, Kubernetes isn't for everyone. I don't like Kubernetes. I used to be a guy, literally founder of KubeFirst. I used to be a guy at USA Today that was saying, I don't think so about this Kubernetes thing. Like, we already have all of these same things that it promises. I ended up leaving that company to go to Remine and was forced to use Kubernetes and became an overwhelming 180 on the technology. It really rocked my world, what it was capable of. But yeah, I mean,
a blessing and a curse, huh?
yeah, for sure.
So was it a total rewrite, or what did you have to
Mostly,
respond?
yeah. Unfortunately, the business that we're in is this underbelly of Kubernetes, where like it's just like this nasty orchestration challenge of chicken and egg problems. Like, you want to run GitOps, which means that you need a Git repository to exist, but you want your Git repositories to be managed by GitOps. So what's the story there? You want to have a single source of truth for all of your secrets throughout your platform, and you want to build the platform on that secret source of truth that doesn't exist yet. So what's the story there? And when you start to really dive into these technical details about the orchestration technique of starting from scratch, and what the deepest prerequisites are to each layer in each pillar of cloud native, from IAC to secrets management to application delivery, you start to uncover a technique. And when you're doing it via script, like we were doing on our original architecture, it's all implicit, and it's rather easy, frankly, to sequence the ordering via script. The problem is that at the end, there's no desired state. So we weren't willing to let go of the ability to marry a desired state in Git to the Kubernetes engine that needs to know what it's supposed to be running. But in order to change that orchestration, we had to throw all of it away. And the new technique, we bought into Argo CD. Flux CD is also a very well-polished, put together GitOps platform. Frankly, we were gonna check out both of them. We picked the one with the cuter looking logo, and it blew us away with what it was capable of doing. And we frankly still, however many years later, haven't had the chance to circle back and really explore Flux CD. But we do have aspirations of someday having Flux CD as a second GitOps option on the KubeFirst platform. We're trying to be extremely vendor agnostic with the tools that are on the platform. But yeah, it was a complete rewrite. It was a like I said, a tough call.
That's funny about the Argo CD, because I was on another live stream right before this one by myself, and the host asked me like, "So, why did you choose that tool?" And I was like, to be honest, I don't know. There was probably a preference or like a feature question, like something that Argo CD had at that time that Flux didn't. And now I know that the answer is like, hey, logo was cuter.
Yeah. I mean, that was the initial coin flip on which one do we do first, and that adorable little orange octopus.
Need to admit, it's a nice mascot. It's a nice logo.
It is a fine logo indeed. It is.
I'm interested in your journey to be a part of the CNCF and what that was like. I understand that like a lot of it was just kind of stumbling through it, but now that you have kind of now that hindsight is 2020, what kind of things can you share that would help somebody in a similar situation that's trying to be a part of the CNCF?
Definitely. You want to take one of these, Jared? Go ahead.
Yeah, you take this one.
All right. So I guess when it came to the CNCF, there was, I mean, when you're a Kubernetes centered technology like ours clearly is, there is home base, and that home base for Kubernetes is the CNCF landscape. Once we made the decision that it was time to open source, we got a conversation going with the CEO of the CNCF, and just kind of approached them. At that point, our project was like 3.5 years old. And we had gone through a lengthy, probably 1.5 year long pilot with an enterprise company that we were working with called Virtue. They do encryption for Gmail and G Suite and Salesforce. They have a bunch of great integrations, but because of the nature of their business, they're also a very, very, very high compliance environment. The KubeFirst platform was a great starting point for them. They had been thinking about adopting Kubernetes for years and years, but were just paralyzed by the process of adopting cloud native and also adhering to their compliance requirements. They were FedRAMP and HIPAA and SOX and you name it. So it took a while to get all those all of that finished. And once it was finished and we were ready to build a team around it and we decided to open source, talking to the CNCF was great. We kind of explained to them our closed source story and that we were about to turn the key and open source it. And they were very enthusiastic about what we were bringing to the Kubernetes community. So really great to work with them. And it was very, very sad. It was like a career moment to see that pull request get merged, that KubeFirst is now on the CNCF landscape. But then Jared and I are looking at each other and we're still working nights and weekends to make KubeFirst run. And we had a big problem on our hands still, which is that we had basically, like, if we have day jobs, then you only have so many nights and weekends hours that you can commit to a project. And once you exhaust all of those, your project can only go so far, and that's your cap. You can't go any further without finding someone else that can work for free, or you have to find a way to raise capital and build a team and go. And so that was suddenly our reality. We're on the CNCF landscape. We finished our pilot with this company, Virtue. We're ready to go, and we have to raise capital now to secure funding to be able to build the team that we need to see the rest of the vision through. So that was a whole nother operation for us. Jared and I don't come from a deep business pedigree. We don't have a ton of connections. We don't have a lot of the things that you need to be able to survive in that capital raising world. So you run out of your connections pretty quick. You're working on your pitch deck to try to describe what the product is that you've built, and you have to include details in this pitch deck. The pitch deck was crazy. Like I don't think I've agonized over anything more than the pitch deck that we were using when we were trying to raise capital, because it's like you get like 10 or 12 slides, right? And you have to tell this enormous story in a way that is going to grok to people that could not really care less that Kubernetes even exists. And like our entire product, our entire platform is centered around this motion and this cloud native movement and this swell of cloud native technologies. So being able to go through that was crazy. And during that capital raising process, we discovered KubeShop, who's not a VC. They're an incubator. They ended up acquiring us. They were founded by some folks that were working at SmartBear. So if you know tools like Swagger and SoapUI, open source tools that they were able to turn a business out of and not disenfranchise their open source community. And like, that was music to our ears, talking to KubeShop. We're talking to these VCs, and rightly so. They just want to know about the money. Where's the money coming from? How do I get my money? Like it's a very reasonable thing for a VC to need. But the founders at KubeShop really understood the value of Kubernetes right up front. Obviously, it's in their name, just like it is ours. They understand that core open source community that they need to find product market fit in, and then there's a way to turn it into a profitable business. So it's been really great working with them and sort of seeing this open source vision through that we always hoped we'd be able to pull off, and have through a lot of grit figured out a way to pull it off. So yeah, that's kind of a little background on our capital raising story and how we hooked up with the Kube Shop.
Yeah, speaking of raising capital, I think you the economy at the time wasn't the best, right? So you had to navigate that as well.
So for us, honestly, we were incredibly lucky to have decided to get married to Kube Shop when we did. It was probably about 1 month after we signed on with them that the tech and economy markets just kind of tanked a little bit, and the VC interest in starting, early stage, like ours was quite early stage. The early stage VC market just kind of shriveled up a little bit right after we signed in and started building our team. So we were very, very fortunate. I would like to say that maybe we were living right. I don't know. But I can't help but feel a little bit lucky that we were able to secure our positions at Kube Shop when we did, and be able to see this opportunity through.
Yeah, just under the wire. Wow. Timing was just right.
Yeah.
So it seems like maybe from the outside that y'all were in agreement, you and Jared. I'd love to get Jared's perspective on this. Were there any, I guess, how did John sell you on this idea and make you leave your 9 to 5 and kind of go all in on this?
That's a really good question. So ironically enough, my first software engineering position was at this company Remind that John was at just moments before me. So I was coming from a completely different background. I like approximately 8 years before that, I was working in the oil fields in the Gulf of Mexico, completely unrelated to tech. And then I decided I was going to stop doing that, went back to school. I got my first opportunity at this company, Remind, and I was a front end software developer. So I was doing that. And I met John in the office one day, and he pulled me over to hit the cloud team. And then that's kind of where I can stop going down that tangent. But since then, we've been glued at the hip, essentially. So really, it's for me, I didn't know how impactful this Kubernetes thing was going to be in the future. Like I was largely living under the guise of what Remind was driving towards and watching the pattern that they were following for their how they delivered software, how they were building their product, the bits and pieces that seemed valuable and translatable to those next career opportunities for me. And then, of course, as John mentioned on the Train to Dash, we solidified that this whole platform thing is really valuable to people. Maybe we can turn it into something. And initially we just thought it was going to be like our side contracting gig. We'd have our 9 to 5s, but we'd also be able to help companies get going on Kubernetes fast. And I think just through that process of us putting in all those nights, weekends, just long days, long hours, always, it just became something that we wanted it to be more than just that side project that we could make a little bit of money off of. So I don't know how well that answered the question, but largely going from that experience at Remind, going to my next shop, hating what they were doing, seeing that it was so far from the elegant thing that I just left, going to another company, and then getting pulled to Virtue by John yet again, where we got to, really give our platform that we had spent all those nights and weekends building a real chance. They adopted it and gave us that pilot. And at that point, it was pretty clear that we didn't obviously feel guaranteed by any means that we would secure funding or be able to get it off the ground. But through those years of motions and seeing having the opportunity to be a company that was good, being at companies that were struggling, being at the company that adopted KubeFirst and seeing their journey and how much it helped them. All of those combination of things really helped me see the value in what KubeFirst could actually become. And then getting on the CNCF landscape, that was a huge milestone for us. That solidified it even more. So like all of these little decisions over, 4 or 5, 6 month timelines all came together, and there was pretty much you could probably argue that around year 2, there was no way we were backing out.
Yeah.
we were committed by most meanings of the word. So really just followed the market along the way.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a lot of trust between you, some like established trust beforehand too. So that certainly helps.
Yeah, I would walk into any battle with my buddy Jared for sure. We were thick as thieves at this point. We've been, just the late nights to just kind of give some color to what a late night looks like. You're hacking away. You're trying to get some new piece to be, efficiently squeezed into this GitOps engine, and there's all this orchestration, and you're trying to create this big bang moment where like you went from nothing to like a complete company. And while you're doing that, you have to, provision some infrastructure, and you have to wait for DNS. And while that's happening and you're waiting for the results of your latest orchestration technique that you adjusted, you're waiting. You're waiting for DNS to resolve. You're waiting for an EKS cluster node to spin up. There's a handful of waiting, and when you're in those late moments, when it's 1 a.m. and you're optimistic that this thing that you just did is going to work, but you got 20 minutes to blow to find out. You get a lot of opportunity to think about what you're doing, talk about what you're doing, think about even things like, daydreaming about what it would be like to have to be on the KubeCon floor with your product, and what would that be like, and what would it be like to have a stage and be able to talk to people about easy Kubernetes adoption, and to be able to give value to this Kubernetes ecosystem that thanks, Fred, that we all that we've gotten so much value from. Be able to give that back has been super awesome.
Yeah, it seems like you had a vision board for sure, and at least in your mind,
Of course,
which helps. And between the two, it seems like getting through those late nights, especially with all the uncertainties and all the obstacles that you faced. And so now kind of fast forward to, you're part of the CNCF and you've got your funding. What was the process like for, making this known and building your community? So I'd like to turn to Fred to ask him, like, how did you stumble upon KubeFirst, and what was your first experience like? And also, like, how has it been trying to let everybody know about this magic that you've created?
Terrible experience. Joke aside, I think you just open sourced the project, so it was not really known yet. Like, you were starting to get known a little bit, so it's really just like it happened that I lost my job and I was looking for a new job, and I was part of a developer relation Slack community, and the DevRel manager at KubeShop was hiring for 2 roles, and 2 the project we have at KubeShop, which is the accelerator we're a part of. And I just shared a message and like, hey, you know what? Looking for my next challenge. Please blew my mind. That was super pretentious, but I'm like I've been doing this for a long time. I want like a great challenge, so I want something that like I need to fight a little bit for, and I want an interesting project, and not even more important, but as important, like nice people to work with. So Kelly, who is managing DevRel for KubeShop, she contacted me and she was like, hey, I have 2 projects, like 2 super interesting projects, but you have a technical background. We have a role that needs someone really technical. Like, would you like to give a closer look to KubeFirst? And I was like, I have no idea what that is. And I went there, I tried it, and I was, are you I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Are you kidding me? I was going to add one more colorful word, but like what? Like with what? Like one common line, I was able to deploy a Kubernetes cluster, and I was a little bit disconnected of like cloud native and Kubernetes for the last 2-3 years. But like when I was working at DigitalOcean, that was one of my focus, and I was working with a lot of startups, and every startups wanted to go and be a Kubernetes shop, or at least use this to deploy their application. And the struggle was real. Like, I mean, that was not that complicated to create the cluster, but you need to understand what is a cluster and what are those pods and what like all those things are working. But still, you're not there yet. Like you want to deploy your application and make it happen. And so that was so nice because it's not a need I had as a user because I don't create my own product, so I don't need to deploy something on Kubernetes. But like within my role, I talked to so many people struggling, and I struggled myself. Then I was like, damn it, like that solved the issues of so many people. And what I've said in my job as doing developer relations, that I often work for companies or at like product that we're focusing on helping people do the things that either it's not their expertise, so they can concentrate on what they do best, which is like building an application, or just make their life easier because it's something complicated. So, I tried it, love it. I went to the interview process, didn't really like that John and Jared guy, but the rest of the team was nice. So I was like, that's cool. But no, seriously, we connected very well. And that was like the perfect interview for me because it was not an interview. It was like just, hey, let's talk about stuff and see if there is a fit and see if you have enough experience and see if on my side, like if they can tell me a little more about the project, the visions, and more important, what's the vision for developer relation? Because that's the problem in the industry where like everybody got their own definition about developer relation, like everything aligned. So that was that was a super long story about like how I joined, which was just like, hey, I'm looking for a job, and they had a job, and like the fit was good. So super happy now. It's been a couple of months, like 5 months now, but the challenge part is real. Not because of the product. Product is great. And the product is not perfect. We have some issues sometimes, like any other product. But so far, I would say like the experience overall is really good. And as I said, the team is great. But like we're one product out of like so many more product. We are open source. We'd had some pros, but also had some challenges. So my job was to come in and nearly start from the scratch. I mean, don't get me wrong, like they were starting to do stuff like live stream and things, but we had to really kind of like start to build that community, starting to enhance or create new educational materials, trying to get out there like we're doing right now with your live stream, with your podcast, to just talk about the things that we love, but also help to get a little more visibility around the project. So great challenge and a lot of work to do, but this is what I was looking for. But what's really great, and it feels like I'm just sending flowers to people here, but I work with a team that really understand, and we have the same kind of vision about like what we should do to be successful as an open source project in the cloud native space. And I got a lot of support also from John and Jared. So yeah, it's a really good space. And I talk so much that I don't remember what was the initial question, but hopefully I answered part of it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Fred. I mean, from my perspective as just like an engineer that spent almost 100% of his career in a closed source capacity, there's a way that you do software. There's a way that you do issues. There's a way that you do application delivery. The stakes are just from a communication standpoint, from a transparency standpoint, there's a lower bar when you're working at a company. When you go and open source, you have to look around a lot. We looked at projects like Argo CD at the time. Argo CD had, community meetings. You could go to their community meetings and ask any question you want. You could, you could show what you were thinking about using their project and get feedback from them. It was very well organized. It was, you go to their GitHub and you can see their milestones and you can see their project direction and you can see the status of the release that they're working on right now. And you can see how to contribute and you can see all of these things are things that you're passively aware exists in the open source world because you use open source as a consumer. But until you have a project that needs to step up to that level, it's a big challenge. And having an expert like someone like Fred that can come in and set up shop in an open source way, in a way that it meets the expectations of an open source community, I can't speak highly enough about the importance of having somebody with mastery over that part of the space. From I know this guy, but from documentation to your issue management to disclosing what your roadmap is to whatever else. Fred's done a great job, and I think our community is really starting to come along. Like we're folks hopping up. We have a Slack workspace where anyone that tries KubeFirst can just even if they're brand new to Kubernetes and they've never used Kubernetes before, they can just hop in and be like, what's a pod? And you've got a team of engineers that are ready to help. Like that is our mission, is to establish easy Kubernetes adoption, and we'll do it at any cost.
And
so
the cool thing is that we can see that we're reaching a milestone in a community where it's not even like one of the KubeFirst employee, KubeShop employee that is answering the question. Now some people from the community are jumping in, even before we have the time to read the question, and they're answering stuff or they're like sending PR. So we are reaching the point where there is enough love around the product. The product is starting to get to be known a little more, and there is passion about it enough that I always say, like, the most precious currency we have is time, and people take their free personal time and they answer questions from other users. So it's, for me, that is fantastic, because like, obviously, we're a for-profit company. Like, at some point, we need to make money out of it. But we are also a human company, and we're there to give back to the community. As John said, like, we use a lot of open source technology, so there's a way for us to give back. Yes, by open sourcing, but by also having a real community where we cheers for each other, where we really try to help everybody being successful. And obviously, we hope they're going to be successful with KubeFirst, but in the end, if they're successful within the cloud native space, I think we win. Like, there's something that works well for us. So having people that reaching the stage where people start to be invested in that project is, I think, that has a team, because I always say developer relation is not just my job, it's everybody's job. As much as some people like or hate it, it's everybody's job to do developer relations. So I feel like we are going the right direction, because we reach that milestone of like people being really starting to be involved in the project, and this is wonderful for me. It's way better than any other metrics or KPI that we're tracking. It's just seeing that people get involved in that project is like that. That's great. That's really, really, really great.
Yeah, speaking of documentation, in my opinion, DigitalOcean has the best documentation out there. And I was just curious, Fred, if you've taken any of those lessons learned.
I like the best, and I'm not removing anything from any other technical writer or editorial team that I work with, but when I was working at DigitalOcean, I learned so much from that team. They're just good overall. So there's a lot of things that I brought back, and to be totally transparent, and I should probably stop to say that, because I think your documentation is good. I think your documentation could be better, though, so it may be the perfectionist in me. So there is still some work to do. Now I think we reach a point where documentation is good enough, having like the proper information for people being successful. But the good thing, though, is that with our community, it's the benefit of having that community too on the business side, is that now people, when they ask questions in our Slack community, I'm like, oh, you're right. Like, that's a really good question, and we should have had something in the docs that answer that question, so you don't have to take the time to answer. Not that we don't like to answer your question, but like, if it's in the doc, it saves everybody's time. So now we're at the stage where we're slowly improving the documentation, because we have a lot of other stuff on our plate. So we're slowly improving the documentation, where we had some section, we had like point in the FAQ, we rephrased some parts, some sections that were not that clear. We had like better screenshot, and at the same time, we also moved to a new platform that makes our life way easier. So we now use the Service, and it really makes our life more easier, like in terms of managing the documentation, trying to remove duplication of content, and using some feature that just make your life easier. But with KubeFirst, the documentation is open source too. Like, it's a GitHub repository, so anybody can submit a PR if they think that they can add more value to the documentation, which is something that I'm looking forward to. So people started to like help with the KubeFirst platform, the code itself, or some like other application part of that KubeFirst ecosystem. Documentation is not there yet, but like, we just switched to a better platform. So looking forward to like have people also chiming in, because documentation is like how we see things, and sometimes we're the worst people to document something because we know the project, we're used to it, so it makes us the best people to write it because we built it, but at the same time the worst because we know every little nook of the product. So having someone like a third party who can give us like a hint in some pages, some section of the documentation is wonderful too.
Yeah, having a good README, having a good contribution document, and yeah, if people can contribute to that as well, I think that's worked well for the Kubernetes community, and it bodes well for people solving, in a lot of ways, solving their own problems. You talked about, pointing people in the right direction, getting them started, and then when they face a roadblock, almost intuitively, them knowing where to go. Which is very important, for kind of advancing the mission and advancing some getting to some of these advanced use cases, and also trying to iterate faster. And so I think that's great, and you've obviously come a long way. But I'm interested to hear. This question has been kind of staring me in the face for a while, and I'm really curious. What was your first bug like?
Oh, our first bug was incredible.
Yeah.
So we had just joined forces with KubeShop, and we headed up to Boston for. We're a geographically distributed company, all remote based. So this was the week that was our first opportunity to kind of all get together with some FaceTime and talk through the direction of the project and where we're going to head. So we're up there with KubeShop's leadership, sort of talking through things, and we have this brand new team that we've pulled together. We're finally moving forward. We had just released our new installer, which was going to be a CLI Golang based installer instead of kind of the scripty variation that was before. We had a team to do what we wanted to do long term. And while we're up in Boston there, the Slack channel for our issues lights up, and we've got our first issue. And it was so exciting to get. It sounds terrible. It was so exciting to get our first bug. Like, we've got a new team, we've got a new vision for the product, we've got a release that had just gotten out the door, and somebody in the open source world is just using it that we've never talked to before. And like, of course that's the plan. But until you get that first issue, or some feedback that, like, an install had been attempted, like, you're just hoping a little bit. Like, you believe in your vision, you want to believe that you have the understanding of the space and the need and that you have a product that fills the hole that's in the industry. But until you have proof, it's a hope. And seeing that first issue, we kind of told leadership, hey, listen, we've got a user, we've got a timeout, pulled our team together, all remote, and just kind of synced on. It happened to be some chipset detail that we didn't. Our development laptops weren't of a particular chipset, and there was a chipset that was unsupported, and we had to figure out a way to get AMD 64 operational as well. So, that was a fun operation. I'll never forget that first bug. There are a handful of firsts that you'll just never forget. The first time a community member in our Slack workspace answered another community member's question was just like, I can't believe we've done it. Like we are building the thing that we want with the flywheel that we want, so that all these cloud native engineers can all center on some really popular tools that we're all going to end up using anyway. So let's use them the same way together and build up this next layer of open source, and to sort of get some proof with that issue that our journey was on its way was really, really exciting for us.
Yeah, I'm sure that was came out of left field, but definitely was a testament to people using your product all over the world and what kind of use cases you open yourself up to, right? And I think that's a lot of the beauty of open source, being that you never know what you're going to get in terms of these issues, or what somebody's environment looks like, where they're coming from, how they're using it. I'm sure there's lots of stories about how maybe somebody's using your products in a way that you didn't even know, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's the beauty of it. I remember when we got our first like strong PR, with a lot of changes, and I was not ready yet to like have a proper contributing guideline, and I was like, that was a nice surprise, but it was like, holy shit, like we're not ready for that. So that gave us the opportunity to say like, okay, now it's the time. Like now I need to set time aside to have some maybe difficult discussion with the person who did the PR, because like, yeah, this is maybe not the direction we're going, or like, oh, we think we did those things like this, but it also gave us the opportunity to say like, hey, yeah, it's true, Fred, like you did not have a proper contributing guideline, and now it's the time to do it. And that was the first step. Like, okay, now we want to be more welcoming to the community and have like give them some guidelines, not to restrict them, but just to help like each side of that party to be sure that we're using each other's time in a proper way, and that we're going in the right direction, or like in the same direction, let's say. But yeah, that was exciting too. It, as I said, it brought some like questioning, like, oh no, we need to do stuff that like we should have probably have done before. But still, I was like, okay, now it's there, and we do it. So and it's great, I think I talked to Jared and John about that, but like, right now people, they help. And for us, contribution, it's not just the code. It's like, hey, you help with the docs, or you create an issue for a problem that we didn't know about. Like for me, it's contribution. You're contributing to help us have a better product, to help the users be more successful, people helping in the Slack community. And right now we try to thank people with like sending some swag, but we know like there is value in the time. So in a near future, like in my plan, in my head at least, and maybe it's news to you guys, but like I want to have like a proper developer program, because it's invaluable what people, like the time that people put and the energy that they put in open source projects. So I want to be sure that we're not the kind of company where it's just like, okay, we want cheap labor. No, this is not what we want. It was never like that. And I want to be sure that the message we transmit, like we give to people, is exactly not that. Hey, we welcome that. It's awesome. It's super helpful, but we want a win-win situation. So right now it's like it's a project for the future, but like it's coming at some point. Really like trying to take care, like continuing to take care of our community and the people that are involved in the project we love so much.
Yeah, I imagine it becomes like a snowball effect after a while, where somebody opens an issue or creates a PR, another person does the same thing. Those, like you said, those people start helping each other, and it kind of accumulates into this thing that maybe That's the thing about open source too, is that you now become aware of things that you didn't know you had to be aware of, and also things that are like forcing you to kind of create these things for the community and for people who are trying to use your product, things that you didn't even know that you would have needed, right?
100%.
Yeah. And what's great is that, like, as I said, I can't remember if I already told John and Jared about that idea of like one day having a developer program, but I was seeing their face when I was saying that, and both they were like, yes, yes, yes. And I can tell you, they were not faking it. Like, if they were like, yes, 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 it's because they believe like it's the right thing to do. So for me, I've been at many companies, and it was not always that easy, like to do developer relation with my vision and how I see that we could help the community and find that win-win situation as like a for-profit company, and has like with people like giving their time, but like being with founders like them that have the same kind of vision really makes my life easier.
I was actually nodding because I was just appreciating the strategy of unveiling this plan on a recording that we can't roll back from. That was just brilliant to me. I was just nodding at the prowess of your strategy.
Oh yeah, actually that was my plan. So now even if they don't want that, like it's done. It's recorded, it's online, so we have to do it. So this is how I roll.
Back. That's right.
It lives forever. All right, as we wrap up here, it sounds like you've worked out a lot of kinks, but you still have a long way to go, and maybe there's no end in sight, and maybe that's a good thing, right? So, how can people contribute to your project? How can people get involved, and how can people see what's going on with KubeFirst?
I would say the first. Oh, sorry, Jared, you were going to. No, please go ahead. Like, John and I talk too much. Like, please take the mic.
I'm used to it. It's been years. Don't worry about it. I think as far as getting involved, definitely hop into our Slack workspace and start asking questions there. We have an intros channel. Introduce yourself. Tell us what you're trying to do. We also have, if you have something that you want to talk about more in a more private setting, we have community office hours. So we have links available for that we can share. As far as actually contributing to the platform itself, we have our roadmap in GitHub, so you can go to GitHub and check out our roadmap and our immediate upcoming releases. We'll do our best to keep hydrating those with issues. We do have a little bit of work to do on adding like good first issue labels to some that might be better for folks to pick up that don't have a full grasp on the KubeFirst platform already. But we're happy to work with anyone in that capacity. One of the nice things that we've done over the last handful of months here is that we did add a local variation of our platform, so that you can run it cost-free and without prerequisites aside from a GitHub or a GitLab account. So, people that want to just like take it for a spin to see if it's even something they'd consider wanting to get that involved with, because it will take a little bit to understand all the different pieces, and maybe maybe you only want to contribute to the CI portion of the platform, and like that's okay. But for that, you're going to have to be a little more familiar with Argo workflows, and so there's a different avenue that you might want to take, and then as opposed to like if you're trying to help with our adding new security tools or whatever the thing is. So I think the best place is in the Slack community. Drop in and ask questions and tell us how you'd like to help, and we'd love to sit down and chat with you about what you can do for us and what we can do for you.
Damn, that was good. Like I couldn't have done better. Actually, I'm saying that it was like the only thing I could have is like the easiest first step, even before trying to contribute. Give us some feedback about your experience, good and not so good. Because like as much as I love it when someone is like, hey, like KubeFirst is amazing, it was great, it saved me a ton of time. I'm like, that's amazing because this is what we're trying to do. At the same time, when people are like, oh yeah, my experience was not that good, and I'm like, okay, that's sad, but like we need to know that because like it's the only way we can improve. And I know many companies say that, like, oh, give us your real like constructive feedback, we want it, and most of them do not care. I can tell you, we share all of those in our internal Slack, and we create issue when we need to, and we update our docs when there's feedback about docs. So we're really looking to that feedback. And to be honest, it's part of like why KubeFirst is better now than it was before, is because we got feedback from the community and we act on those. So I would say even before contributing, which is totally great too, like the first like super meaningful contribution that does not require to know the platform and have like multiple skills is as a user, or if you try to be a user, something's not working as you wish, if you have features idea, if you had different expectation, let us know. Like on Twitter, on LinkedIn, ping one of us directly, go on the Slack community in public and private, like any type of ways. There is so many ways to contact like the team overall or all of us. Let me know. And yes, I spend way too much time on Twitter, so that's also a great place to contact me.
Yeah, you've been seeing on a lot of different live streams like this. You're just on one earlier today. And
That's
so
a live
you're
stream day.
definitely doing a good job, Fred, with getting the good word out there. I was able to find the docs.kubefirst.io/community page, which is a good page to go to get the Slack link and open an issue or book a meeting or even send an email. So it's really cool that you all are putting yourself out there and making it available for the community. And kind of, it seems like your company is doing a good job with kind of iterating in public too, which is also really cool to see, because like going back to what you said about Argo CD being like doing business in the public, right? And there's clear on how you can contribute, how you can tune into their meetings and everything like that. I think that's so important, just because, you know, not only do you know more about the company, but you also know how to contribute, how you can get involved. And, you know, starting a community is hard and hard work. And I think, you know, all those little aspects of it, just making it, you know, inclusive and really available to anyone to really jump with both feet and get started right away is really important. So I encourage you to check that out. But as we close out here, I already put this up before, but like as you were talking, I was like, oh, I wonder if anybody's curious about, you know, if you guys are hiring. So go to careers.kubeshop.io to check out the positions that are open, and if you want to work with these guys and be involved in this amazing company and what they're doing over there. And then obviously the GitHub page, github.com/KubeFirst, to, you know, dive in and read their docs and maybe figure out a way you can add to those docs and add value there. And I'm sure they'd love to have it. So,
and we love Stargazer. So yeah, we have our mascot K-Ray. He's only feeding on stars from GitHub on the KubeFirst repo. So if you want to help us feed K-Ray,
that's important.
Yep.
Always
Yeah.
challenge.
While you're on that GitHub page anyway, checking out our open source project, by all means, hit that star, keep our project bookmarked, keep tabs on what we're up to, and feed our buddy K-Ray a star. He gets so hungry, gets so grouchy when he hasn't had a star. We would love all the GitHub stars, of course.
Awesome. Any conferences coming up, or you know, things that you'll be at in the future where people can visit you in person? Or
I'm gonna be in Toronto next week. So for people in Canada, there is a DevOps Exchange, and I have a memory blank. It's on the 25th. And I'm going to talk GitOps, so I'm not going to be the only speaker. It's a real nice meetup there. And that's kind of it for the public appearance for the next month-ish.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think in the fall we're expecting to have a good presence at SIBO Navigate over in London. And we're also obviously looking forward to KubeCon North America. It's going to be in Chicago this year. Definitely looking forward to that one. I think we're going to have some really cool new features in advance of that. So we're going to be ready to show off some cool new open source.
Yep.
nice. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Definitely.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for taking the time today. Really appreciate you giving the backstory to KubeFirst, and glad you're able to make it out from, this side hustle to now, full-time hustle and seem to be thriving. So
Thank you so much, Chad.
Thanks for having us.
Chad.
It's been a pleasure being here.
All right. Well, thanks again, and see everybody next time. Bye.